My daughter and her boyfriend pranked me by locking me in our basement during Christmas. Stay there, old woman. Figure it out, she laughed. I broke free and never looked back. 8 months later, they came begging. Glad you're here. Follow my story to the end and comment your city to share how far it reaches. It was Christmas Eve, snow falling thick outside our Ohio home. I sat by the tree, wrapping gifts, expecting a cozy night with my daughter, Emily, and her boyfriend, Ryan. At 60, I thought I could trust them to share the holiday spirit. "Mom, come check the decorations downstairs," Emily called, her voice sweet. I followed, clueless. The basement door slammed behind me, the lock clicked, and their laughter echoed. "You're a burden, always needing something," Ryan sneered through the door. My heart sank. Emily, the girl I raised alone after her father died, stood by him. Shivering in the dark, I realized this wasn't a prank. It was betrayal. I'm Barbara Miller, and this is my story of breaking free from those who broke me. Stick around, share your thoughts, and let me know what city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. Snow fell in heavy sheets outside our small Ohio home, blanketing the world in silence. I sat by the Christmas tree, wrapping paper crinkled around me, a mug of hot cocoa cooling on the table. At 60, I still loved the holidays. Lights twinkling, the smell of pine, the promise of family. Emily, my daughter, was upstairs with her boyfriend Ryan. I'd raised her alone after my husband, Tom, died in a factory accident when she was just 10. Every Christmas since, I'd made sure our home was warm, filled with love, even when money was tight. I worked double shifts at the diner, saved every penny for her clothes, her school trips, her dreams. "Mom, come check the decorations downstairs," Emily called from the hallway. Her voice sounded bright, excited, like when she was a little girl waiting for Santa. I smiled, set down the wrapping paper, and followed her to the basement door. The stairs creaked under my weight as I descended, expecting to see garland or maybe the old nativity set I'd promised to dig out. The air was cold, damp, smelling of mildew and forgotten boxes. "Where's the decoration, honey?" I asked, squinting into the dim light. The door slammed shut behind me. A metallic click echoed. The lock. My stomach twisted. "Emily?" I called, my voice shaking. Laughter came through the door, sharp and cruel. Emily's laugh mixed with Ryan's deeper chuckle. "Stay there, old woman. Figure it out," Emily said, her tone mocking. I pressed my hands against the door, pounding hard. "This isn't funny. Let me out." "You're a burden, Barbara," Ryan's voice cut through, cold as the concrete floor. "Always needing something. Meds, rides, money. We're done carrying you." My knees buckled. I slid down the door, the wood rough against my sweater. Emily, my Emily, the girl I'd rocked to sleep, the girl I'd stayed up late sewing costumes for, was calling me a burden? "I've never asked for anything I didn't need," I said, my voice breaking. "My arthritis meds, the doctor visits, they're not optional." Ryan laughed, a harsh bark. "You think those pills fix anything? You're just old, clinging to us like a leech." I heard their footsteps fade upstairs, the muffled sound of Christmas music starting again. The basement was freezing, the single bulb overhead flickering. My breath came in short gasps, my chest tight, not just from the cold, but from the betrayal slicing through me. I'd given everything for Emily. After Tom died, I took on extra shifts, skipped meals to pay for her braces, her prom dress, her college applications. When she brought Ryan home 2 years ago, I welcomed him, cooked dinners, even helped with their rent when Ryan's construction jobs dried up. And now this, locked in my own basement on Christmas Eve, like some animal they didn't want anymore. I pulled my sweater tighter, my fingers stiff from the cold. The basement was cluttered. Boxes of Emily's old toys, Tom's fishing gear, a broken chair I'd meant to fix. My phone was upstairs, left on the coffee cable. No signal down here anyway. I tried the door again, rattling the knob, but it wouldn't budge. Panic crept in, but I pushed it down. I wasn't going to die here, not like this. I scanned the room, my eyes landing on a small window near the ceiling, barely wide enough for a person. It was rusted shut, but it was my only chance. I dragged a crate over, my joints screaming with every step, and climbed up, wincing as I pushed against a frame. The window groaned, but gave way, letting in a blast of icy air and snow. I squeezed through, my sweater catching on the jagged edge. Snow stung my face as I stumbled into the backyard, shivering, my slippers soaked through. The street was quiet, most neighbors away for the holidays. My house glowed with Christmas lights, mocking me from the outside. I could see Emily and Ryan through the living room window, laughing, clinking glasses like nothing had happened. My heart broke, not just for me, but for the girl I thought Emily was. I turned away, trudging through the snow, no plan, no destination, just the need to get away. I don't know how long I walked, my breath puffing in clouds, my fingers numb. My arthritis made every step agony, but stopping wasn't an option. That's when headlights cut through the snow. An old blue sedan pulled up, the driver's window rolling down. "Ma'am, you okay out here?" a man called, his voice kind but urgent. He was older, maybe 70, with gray hair and glasses fogged by the cold. "I'm George Davis," he said, stepping out, a heavy coat over his flannel shirt. "You look frozen half to death." I tried to speak, but my teeth chattered too hard. "My daughter locked me in the basement," I managed, the words sounding ridiculous even to me. George's face darkened, his jaw tightening. Who does that to their own mother? "Come on, let's get you warmed up." He helped me into his car, the heater blasting blessed warmth. "My wife, Clara, and I live just down the road. You're coming with us." I wanted to protest, to say I could manage, but the truth was I couldn't, not tonight. George drove carefully through the snow, the wipers slapping rhythmically. He didn't press me for details, just kept the radio low, Christmas carols filling the silence. When we pulled into a modest brick house, the front door opened before we reached it. A woman with short silver hair and a warm smile stood there, a quilted apron tied around her waist. "George Davis, what have you brought home now?" she said, but her eyes were soft, concerned. "This is Clara," George said, helping me out of the car. "Clara, this lady's been through something awful." Clara took one look at my soaked slippers and trembling hands and sprang into action. "Good heavens, you're ice cold. Come inside. Let's get you dry." She led me to a cozy living room, a fire crackling in the hearth. Before I knew it, I was wrapped in a blanket, a mug of hot tea in my hands. Clara sat across from me, her face kind but expectant. "What happened, honey?" she asked gently. The words poured out. Emily's betrayal, Ryan's cruel words, the basement, the window. I told them about the years I'd spent raising Emily, working myself to the bone, only to be tossed aside like trash. George shook his head, his hands clenched. "That's no way to treat family, no way at all." Clara reached over, squeezing my hand. "You're safe here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out what's next." I wanted to argue, to say I couldn't impose, but their kindness was like a lifeline. That night, I slept in their guest room, the bed soft with flannel sheets. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was taking up space someone else resented. The next morning, Clara was already in the kitchen, the smell of pancakes and coffee filling the air. "Sleep okay?" she asked, sliding a plate in front of me. "Better than I thought possible," I admitted. It was true. I'd woken without the usual weight of worrying about Emily's moods or Ryan's complaints. George joined us, sipping coffee. "I was thinking," he said, "there's a community center in Willow Creek, about 50 miles from here. They're always looking for volunteers. Might be a good place to start fresh." Willow Creek. I'd never heard of it, but the idea of a fresh start sparked something in me. I'd spent so long living for Emily, shrinking myself to fit her life, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have my own. "It's not much," Clara added, "but they've got art classes for kids. I know you used to paint. Emily mentioned it once when we met at the grocery store." I'd almost forgotten that part of myself. The part that loved sketching landscapes, teaching Emily to mix colors when she was little. Maybe it was time to rediscover it. By noon, George had called a friend in Willow Creek who knew of a small apartment above a bakery. It wasn't fancy, but the rent was affordable with my Social Security and whatever I could earn volunteering. Clara packed me a bag of clothes from her closet, sweaters, a warm coat, things she insisted she didn't need. "You're not imposing," she said firmly when I tried to protest. "You're starting over. We've all got to do that sometime." George drove me to the bus station, handing me a slip of paper with their phone number. "You call us if you need anything," he said, his voice gruff but warm. The bus ride to Willow Creek was quiet, the snow-covered fields blurring past. I felt lighter with every mile, like I was leaving more than just a town behind. When I arrived, the bakery owner, Mrs. Jenkins, was waiting, a stout woman in her 50s with flour-dusted hands and a no-nonsense smile. "Apartments upstairs," she said, leading me to a small studio with big windows and a view of the town square. "It's not much, but it's yours." I nodded, my throat tight. Mine. A word I hadn't associated with anything in years. The next day, I walked to the Willow Creek Community Center, a low brick building with colorful murals on the walls. Laura Bennett, the director, was a woman in her 40s with a quick laugh and sharp eyes. I told her I was looking for a fresh start, leaving out the part about the basement. "We could use someone like you," she said, showing me the art room, canvases stacked against the wall, paintbrushes in jars. "Our kids' art program needs a teacher. It's volunteer for now, but there's a small stipend." I hadn't held a paintbrush in years, but the thought of teaching kids, of creating something beautiful, felt like a gift. My first class was a group of 8 kids, ages 6 to 12, all eager to smear paint on paper. Their energy was infectious, pulling me out of my own head. One boy, Tommy, shyly showed me his drawing of a dog. "It's not very good," he mumbled. I knelt beside him, showing him how to blend colors. "It's yours, and that makes it perfect," I said. His smile was like sunlight breaking through clouds. For the first time in years, I felt useful, not as a maid or a bank account, but as me, Barbara. Weeks turned into months. I settled into a routine, mornings at the community center, afternoons in my apartment, sketching by the window. Mrs. Jenkins would wave up at me when she closed the bakery, her apron dusted with sugar. Laura became a friend, inviting me for coffee, listening when I shared bits of my past without judgment. I started calling myself Barb Wilson, a name that felt new, unburdened by the weight of my old life. Barbara Miller was the woman who'd lived for Emily, who'd apologized for existing. Barb Wilson was someone else, someone who painted, who taught, who laughed without looking over her shoulder. One evening, as I was locking up the art room, Laura handed me a note. "Someone called the front desk asking about you," she said, her brow furrowed. "A woman named Nancy Coleman said she's from your old town." My heart sank. Nancy was a neighbor from Ohio, the kind who knew everyone's business. I took the note, my hand steady despite the dread creeping in. "Thanks," I said, tucking it into my pocket. I wasn't ready to face the past, not yet. But I knew it was coming, whether I wanted it or not. The Willow Creek Community Center became my sanctuary. Every morning, I walked through the town square, past Mrs. Jenkins' bakery with its warm smell of cinnamon rolls, to the art room where paint-splattered tables waited. At 60, I'd never imagined teaching kids to draw would feel so right. Their laughter, their messy sketches, their wide-eyed questions pulled me out of the dark place Emily and Ryan had left me in. I was Barb Wilson now, not Barbara Miller, the woman who'd been locked in a basement on Christmas Eve. Barb Wilson taught kids to mix colors, to see beauty in their mistakes. Barb Wilson didn't flinch every time a door closed too loudly. Laura Bennett, the center's director, was a godsend. She'd sit with me after classes, sharing coffee and stories about her own kids. "You've got a gift, Barb," she said one day, watching me help a shy girl named Lily paint a sunset. "You make these kids feel seen." Her words warmed me more than the space heater humming in the corner. For years, I'd been invisible, cooking, cleaning, paying bills for Emily and Ryan, only to be called a burden. Here I was needed for something real. My favorite student was Tom, a 70-year-old widower who'd signed up for my adult art class on a whim. He'd spent his life as a mechanic, hands more used to wrenches than paintbrushes. "Never thought I'd be doing this," he grumbled during our first session, his sketch of a tree looking more like a lopsided cloud. I smiled, showing him how to soften the lines. "You're doing fine, Tom. It's about trying, not being perfect." He grunted, but kept coming back, his sketches improving each week. We'd talk about small things, his garden, my apartment, the way Willow Creek's autumn leaves turned gold. He never asked about my past, and I was grateful. Some stories were too heavy to share. My studio apartment above Mrs. Jenkins' bakery was small but bright, with sunlight streaming through the windows. I'd furnished it with thrift store finds, a wooden table, a cushioned chair, a bed with a quilt Clara had sent me. Every evening I'd sit by the window, sketching the town square below. Mrs. Jenkins would wave as she locked up, her apron dusted with flour. The diner across the street buzzed with families, their chatter drifting up on warm nights. I started a journal, something I'd never done before. "Tom painted a whole landscape today," I wrote one night. His hands shook, but he didn't give up. I think I'm learning as much from him as he's learning from me. Willow Creek was different from my old town. Back in Ohio, I'd lived in Emily's shadow, always tiptoeing around her moods, Ryan's temper. Here, people smiled when they saw me. The librarian, Sarah, saved me books about art history. The mailman, Jim, would chat about the weather. Clara and George called every Sunday, checking in like I was family. "You sound happy, Barb," Clara said once, her voice crackling through the phone. I was. For the first time in years, I wasn't apologizing for existing. But the past has a way of creeping back. It started with that note from Laura, the one about Nancy Coleman's call. I'd tucked it in my pocket, hoping to ignore it, but 2 weeks later, I was shelving art supplies when Laura approached again. "Barb, that woman called back," she said, her voice low. "Nancy Coleman, she's persistent, says it's urgent, something about your daughter." My stomach nodded. Nancy was the kind of neighbor who thrived on gossip, always poking into other people's lives. I'd barely spoken to her in Ohio, but she'd known enough about Emily and Ryan to fill a book. "I'll call her," I said, though every part of me wanted to run. Back in my apartment, I stared at the phone for an hour before dialing. Nancy picked up on the first ring, her voice dripping with eagerness. "Barbara Miller, thank goodness I found you. I've been calling community centers across the state." I gripped the receiver, keeping my tone even. "Hello, Nancy. What's this about?" She didn't waste time. "It's Emily. She and Ryan are in a bad way. People are worried." I leaned against the counter, the smell of fresh bread from downstairs grounding me. "Worried about what, exactly?" Nancy's voice turned conspiratorial. "Well, since you left, things have gone downhill. Ryan lost his job at the construction site, showed up late too many times, smelling like whiskey. Emily's been working double shifts at the diner, but they're behind on rent. Word is, their landlord's threatening eviction." I closed my eyes, picturing the house I'd helped them afford, the one I'd cleaned and repaired while they complained about my presence. "And Emily?" I asked, my voice steady despite the memories flooding back. "She's struggling," Nancy said. "Cries all the time, says you abandoned them. Ryan's been telling everyone you had some kind of breakdown, walked out during Christmas. They filed a missing person report, but the police didn't do much, said you're an adult, free to go where you want." A breakdown. Of course, that's how they'd spun it. Poor Emily and Ryan, abandoned by her unstable mother. It was almost clever, making me the villain while hiding what they'd done. "Did they mention how I left?" I asked, my tone sharp. Nancy hesitated. "Well, Emily said you got upset during an argument, locked yourself in the basement, and then disappeared." I laughed, a bitter sound that surprised me. "Locked myself in the basement? That's what they're saying?" Nancy's silence told me she wasn't buying it either. "What really happened, Barbara?" she asked. I took a deep breath, the truth heavy on my tongue. "They locked me in, Nancy, called me a burden, laughed and left me there on Christmas Eve. I climbed out through a window and never went back. There was a long pause. "My God," she whispered. "I knew something was off, but that's awful." "I didn't need her pity. I'm fine now," I said. "I've built a life here. I don't want Emily or Ryan knowing where I am." Nancy's voice softened. "I won't tell them. But Barbara, they're in trouble, real trouble. The landlord's giving them 30 days to pay up or get out. Emily's been asking around, trying to track you down." I thanked her and hung up, my hands shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. They didn't want me back because they were sorry. They wanted me back because their lives were falling apart without someone to lean on. I didn't tell Laura or Tom about the call. Instead, I threw myself into my work. The kids' art class was preparing for a community showcase, their paintings lining the center's walls. Lily, the shy girl, had painted a vibrant sunset, all oranges and purples. "Will you hang it up, Miss Barb?" she asked, her eyes bright. I nodded, pinning it proudly beside Tom's latest landscape. Teaching them, watching their confidence grow, reminded me of who I used to be, before Emily's demands, before Ryan's sneers. I loved painting, loved creating. Now I was doing it again, not for anyone else, but for me. One afternoon, as I was cleaning brushes, Tom lingered after class. "You seem distracted, Barb," he said, his voice gruff but kind. I hesitated, then told him about Nancy's call, leaving out the worst details. "My daughter's looking for me," I said, "not because she misses me, but because she needs something." Tom nodded, his hands steady as he packed his sketchbook. "Family's tricky. My son stopped talking to me after his mom died, thought I was holding him back. Sometimes you've got to let people figure out their own messes." His words stuck with me, simple but true. I'd spent years fixing Emily's messes, her bad boyfriends, her missed rent payments, no more. Clara called that Sunday, her voice warm through the phone. "How's my favorite artist doing?" she teased. I laughed, telling her about the showcase, Lily's sunset, Tom's progress. But I couldn't hide the tension in my voice. "Something's wrong," she said, her tone shifting. I told her about Nancy, about Emily and Ryan's troubles. "They're not your responsibility anymore," Clara said firmly. "You've built something good, Barb. Don't let them take it away." I knew she was right, but the thought of Emily crying, of Ryan spiraling, tugged at the part of me that still remembered the little girl who'd clung to me after her father died. I started locking my apartment door at night, something I'd never bothered with in Willow Creek. The town felt safe, but the idea of Emily or Ryan showing up unannounced made my chest tight. I blocked their numbers on my phone, deleted their old voicemails. Emily's voice, sharp with complaints. Ryan's slurred demands for money. I didn't want to hear them anymore. But deep down, I knew they'd find me eventually. People like them always did when they needed something. The community showcase was a week later, the center buzzing with parents, kids, and neighbors. Lily's sunset drew a crowd, her parents beaming as she explained her painting. Tom stood beside his landscape, shyly accepting compliments. I moved through the room, helping kids explain their work, feeling a pride I hadn't known in years. Laura pulled me aside, her face serious. "Barb, there's a woman outside asking for you, says she's from your old town." My heart sank. I knew who it was before I even stepped outside. Nancy Coleman stood by the curb, her coat too thin for the October chill. "Barbara," she said, her eyes wide, "you look different, good different." I crossed my arms, the cold air biting my skin. "What do you want, Nancy?" She fidgeted, glancing around like she was afraid someone would overhear. "It's Emily. She's been asking everyone about you. Says she needs to talk, that it's urgent. I didn't tell her where you are, but she's desperate." "Ryan's in trouble too. Got arrested last week for drunk driving." I felt a pang, not for Ryan, but for the life Emily had chosen. "They're not my problem anymore," I said, my voice firm. "I'm done fixing their mistakes." Nancy nodded, but her eyes were pleading. "I get it, Barbara, but Emily's alone now. Ryan's out on bail, but she's not coping. The eviction notice came yesterday." I looked back at the community center, the warm lights spilling out, the sound of kids laughing. This was my life now, not the chaos I'd left behind. "Thanks for letting me know," I said, "but I've made my choice." I turned and walked back inside, my steps steady, my heart heavy but clear. That night, I sat by my window, sketching the town square under moonlight. The journal lay open beside me. "The showcase was a success," I wrote. "Lily's smile, Tom's pride, it's worth more than anything Emily or Ryan could offer. They're looking for me, but I'm not lost. I'm found." I closed the journal, the weight of Nancy's words lingering. They were struggling, but so had I, locked in that basement, climbing through that window. I'd survived. They would too. Or they wouldn't. Either way, it wasn't my burden to carry anymore. The Willow Creek Community Center was alive with color, the kids' artwork glowing under the string lights we'd hung for the annual fall festival. I moved through the crowd, pinning up paintings, smiling as parents praised their children's work. At 60, I'd never felt so at home. Teaching art, watching kids like Lily blossom, gave me a purpose I hadn't known since Emily was small. I was Barb Wilson now, not Barbara Miller, the woman who'd been locked in a basement on Christmas Eve. Here, I was someone who mattered, not a burden, not a leech, just Barb, the art teacher who made kids laugh and feel proud. Laura Bennett caught my eye across the room, nodding approvingly as I helped Tom hang his latest landscape. He'd come so far, his hands steadier now, his sketches full of life. "You're a natural, Barb," he said, his voice gruff but warm. I smiled, brushing paint off my hands. "You're not so bad yourself, Tom." The festival was my favorite event yet, a celebration of everything I'd built in Willow Creek. But as I stepped outside to grab more pins from the storage room, Laura's voice stopped me. "Barb, there is someone here for you," she said, her face tense. "They're waiting by the front desk." My heart thudded. I knew who it was before I saw her. Emily stood in the lobby, her coat too big for her thin frame, her dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Ryan was beside her, hands in his pockets, his face gaunt, eyes bloodshot. They looked like shadows of the people who'd laughed as they locked me in that basement. I straightened, my hands steady despite the memories flooding back. "Emily," I said, my voice calm, professional. "Ryan, what brings you here?" Emily's eyes widened, taking in my neat sweater, my confident posture. "Mom," she said, her voice shaky, "you look different." I nodded, not smiling. "I am different. What do you want?" Ryan shifted, his boots scuffing the floor. "Can we talk somewhere private?" he asked, glancing at the families milling around. I gestured to a quiet corner near the windows, where the festival's noise faded to a hum. "This is private enough, I'd say what you need to say." Emily sat down, twisting her hands in her lap. Ryan stayed standing, his jaw tight. "We've been looking for you for months," Emily said, her voice breaking. "We thought you were gone for good. The police wouldn't help, said you left on your own." I raised an eyebrow. "I did leave on my own, after you locked me in the basement and called it a prank." Emily flinched, her eyes dropping to the floor. Ryan cleared his throat. "That was a mistake, Barbara. We were stressed, not thinking straight." "We're sorry." I studied them, searching for sincerity. Emily's eyes were wet, but I knew her tears, how she'd cry to get out of trouble as a teenager, to make me forgive her for sneaking out, for lying. Ryan's apology was flat, rehearsed, like he was reading from a script. "A mistake," I repeated, my voice cold. "You locked me in a freezing basement on Christmas Eve, called me a burden, told me to figure it out. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." Emily's face crumpled. "Mom, please, we were wrong." "I know we hurt you, but we're family. We can fix this." Family. The word hit like a stone. I'd spent years believing it meant everything, sacrificing my savings, my time, my dreams for Emily. I'd worked nights at the diner, sewn her prom dress, paid her rent when Ryan couldn't, and they'd thrown it all away. "What do you really want, Emily?" I asked, my voice steady. She hesitated, glancing at Ryan, who nodded like they'd planned this. "Things are bad, Mom," she said. "Ryan lost his job. We got evicted last week. We're staying in a motel, but we can't afford it much longer. We need you." There it was. The truth I'd known was coming. They didn't miss me. They didn't love me. They needed me to fix their mess, to be the safety net they'd always taken for granted. I leaned back, crossing my arms. "You need me," I said. But what about what I needed that night? Warmth, safety, respect? You laughed while I climbed out a window in a snowstorm. Ryan's face reddened. "We said we're sorry, Barbara." "What more do you want? You're acting like we're monsters, but you're the one who ran off, left us to deal with everything." I laughed, a sharp sound that made them both flinch. "Deal with everything? You mean the house I helped pay for? The bills I covered when you couldn't? The repairs I did while you complained I was in the way?" Emily's tears fell faster now, but I wasn't moved. "We were under pressure," she said. "Ryan was drinking, I was working doubles. We couldn't handle it all. We took it out on you, and that was wrong. But we're family, Mom. You can't just walk away." "I didn't walk away," I said, my voice like steel. "You locked me out of my own life. You called me a leech, told me to figure it out. So I did." I stood, looking down at them. "I figured out how to live without you. I figured out how to be happy without carrying your mistakes." Ryan stepped forward, his voice rising. "You think you're better than us now, living in this little town, playing art teacher? You're 60, Barbara. What happens when you can't do this anymore? When you're sick, alone, with no one to help you?" It was a threat, just like the ones he'd used before, when he'd guilt me into paying their electric bill, when he'd yell about how much I cost them. But I wasn't that woman anymore. "I'm doing just fine," I said, "and if I need help, I have people who care about me, not because I'm useful, but because I'm me." Emily reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "Please, Mom," she whispered. "We're losing everything. Ryan's in debt. I'm barely scraping by. We need you to come home." Home. The word felt hollow. Home wasn't the house I'd kept running while they complained. Home was here. Willow Creek, the art room, the kids' laughter, Mrs. Jenkins' wave, Clara and George's Sunday calls. "I am home," I said, "and I'm not leaving." I walked away, back to the festival, where Lily was showing her parents another painting. Ryan called after me, his voice angry. "You'll regret this, Barbara. You can't just cut us off." I didn't turn back. The festival's warmth wrapped around me, drowning out his words. The next day, Emily called the community center. Laura handed me the phone, her eyes worried. "She's been calling all morning," she said. I shook my head. "Tell her I'm not here." Emily called again the next day, and the day after that. 47 times in a week, Laura said, her voice tight with frustration. "We had to assign someone else to the phones," she told me. Emily left voicemails, her tone shifting from pleading to angry to desperate. "Mom, please, just talk to me," she said in one. "We're sorry, we'll do better." Then, "You're being selfish, abandoning your own daughter." Finally, "We lost the motel room, Mom. I'm sleeping in my car. Ryan's gone. Please." I listened to the messages once, then deleted them. Each one felt like a hook, trying to pull me back to the chaos I'd escaped. Clara came to visit that weekend, sitting with me in my apartment. I told her about Emily's calls, Ryan's threats. "They're not your burden anymore," she said, her voice firm. "You've built something beautiful here. Don't let them tear it down." I nodded, the weight of her words settling over me. She was right. I'd spent too long carrying their problems, shrinking myself to fit their needs. Not anymore. 2 weeks later, I was setting up for an art class when Mrs. Jenkins called up to my apartment. "Barb, there's a young woman downstairs asking for you," she said. My stomach dropped. I walked down, my hands steady but my heart racing. Emily stood outside the bakery, her hair tangled, her eyes red from crying. She looked small, broken, nothing like the confident girl who'd locked me in that basement. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking, "I had to see you." I crossed my arms, standing in the doorway. You've seen me. Now what? She took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. Christmas, the things we said, how we treated you. I was wrong. Ryan was wrong. I waited, letting her words hang in the air. And? I prompted. She looked confused. And I want you to come back. We can start over. I've learned my lesson. I tilted my head. What lesson, Emily? Her face flushed. That we need each other, that family sticks together. I shook my head. Try again. What did you learn about what you did to me? She faltered, her hands twisting her coat. We shouldn't have locked you in. It was cruel. I didn't mean it. I studied her, seeing the same calculation I'd seen in Ryan. She was sorry, not because she understood my pain, but because her life had fallen apart. You locked me in a basement, I said, my voice low. You called me a burden, laughed while I was scared and cold. You didn't want me then. You only want me now because you need me. Emily's tears fell, but I felt nothing. I'm alone, Mom, she said. Ryan left. I lost my job. I have nowhere to go. You're all I have. I looked at her, the girl I'd raised, the girl I'd loved more than anything. But love wasn't enough, not when it came with manipulation, with entitlement. That's not my problem anymore, I said. You told me to figure it out. I did. Now it's your turn. I handed her a slip of paper with the address of a social services office in Ohio. They have programs for job training, housing, addiction if Ryan needs it. Start there. She stared at the paper, her hands trembling. But what about us? She asked. We don't have an us, I said. You made that clear on Christmas Eve. I turned and walked back upstairs, the bakery's warmth wrapping around me. Emily didn't follow. I heard her sob, then the sound of her car pulling away. I sat by my window, sketching the town square, the festival's lights still glowing in my mind. I wrote in my journal, Emily came today. She wanted the old me, the one who'd fix everything. But I'm not that woman anymore. I'm Barb, and I'm enough. Months passed, each one brighter than the last. I was promoted to lead the community center's art program, my stipend enough to cover my rent and a few small luxuries, a new sketchbook, a warm scarf. Tom started a painting club with other seniors, their laughter filling the art room. Clara and George invited me for Thanksgiving, their table crowded with neighbors who felt like family. I taught Sarah, a new student, to draw her first portrait, her smile as bright as Lily's had been. This was my life now, purposeful, peaceful, mine. One crisp morning, as I arranged a new display of kids' artwork, I saw Ryan across the street. He looked worse than before, thinner, his jacket torn, his eyes hollow. He didn't approach, just watched me through the window. I met his gaze, unafraid. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I didn't know if he'd gotten help, if Emily had. I didn't need to know. They'd made their choices, just as I'd made mine. I sat by my window that night, the town square quiet below. Mrs. Jenkins waved as she locked up, her apron dusted with sugar. The diner's lights glowed, families laughing inside. I opened my journal. Today I saw Ryan, I wrote. He looked lost, but I'm not. I've found my place, my people. I'm not a burden. I'm a gift. I closed the book, the weight of the past finally gone. I'd survived their betrayal, built a life they couldn't touch. Now I'm curious, what would you do if your family turned their back on you? Have you ever had to start over? Share your thoughts below and tell me what city you're watching from. Let's see how far this story reaches.